Thank you. We are then on item 7, the strategic performance report, which is before us tonight. The recommendation is that Cabinet review it and address issues arising and potential improvement actions. Can I just hold the meeting because I've just realised we're recording. Sorry. We are for it again, so we will continue. We are on item 7, which is the quarterly review of strategic performance. It asks us that Cabinet look at this and potential improvement actions. I'm going to ask Simone Doherty, one of our executive directors. Hines. I'm going back. Sorry, sincere apologies. You can tell I've been here too long. Thanks, Simone.
Okay, I don't have too much about the report, just to highlight this is a new format, so if there are any feedback on the content and style of it, we'll be happy to take that back. I'd just like to go to Appendix A on page 32. This is the executive summary and the dashboard format, so just to highlight, you can see the finance and people service delivery indicators, they are all green, all on target. In terms of processes, we do have 3 of those red, and improvement we have 1 red. Then, so turning to page 33 and 34, we've then got a commentary on some positive aspects and also areas of improvement. The areas that are red on the dashboard, we have got a comment against each of those on page 34 with the areas of improvement. We've then got more detailed commentary on some of the areas as well. So I'll leave it there, but obviously
Thank you very much. I think I do have Councillor Wilson down as a speaker. I've lost my speakers list. Councillor Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair. There are a few items that I wish to raise with Cabinet tonight, either to take forward, look at, or perhaps revise, because they have flagged some issues for me, and I'll start on page 33. Chair, the 3rd bullet point down, where it specifies that we're dealing with 94% of contacts on the telephone at first point of contact. That's all well and good, but I'm concerned about the target. In most areas of work which I've dealt with in the public sector, and indeed I've spoken to colleagues in the private sector, I believe the industry standard is around 90 to 95% of dealing with calls at first point of contact. It's good that we're actually, depending on which point of view you take, in or around that bracket, but I think as a local authority we should be holding ourselves to that higher standard. So I would ask Cabinet to consider revising that target moving forward. The 5th bullet point down, I think I understand the way it reads, but it isn't that clear to members of the public if they were reading it. It says about late payment of invoices. Is that late payment of invoices that we're making, or is that payment of invoices to us? I'm hoping it's neither, actually, because it's a bad in either circumstance. Although it's pleasing it's come down, but I think the report should clarify that that is us making late payments to others, and that is particularly concerning if those are dealing with SMEs, because we know that in the economic cycle that delaying payments to SMEs actually causes a lot of those to go to the wall. £7,299.20 might not be an exorbitant amount in the overall scheme of our budget, but to some of those SMEs it could mean the difference between paying an employee and not paying an employee, so I think we need to clarify that. Turning the page to page 34, this is something I banged on about at scrutiny panels for some time, about return to work interviews and annual development reviews. In my view, they aren't good enough. We should be aiming much higher than 74% or 77% as performance. And what concerns me even more, actually, is that those people who do not have their performance reports completed within the financial year, or indeed have their managing attendance done properly, is if it comes to disciplinary action, you could not uphold those disciplinary decisions if they were to be appealed. If someone has not gone through the proper attendance management process, and I know this myself because I have to manage attendance as a manager in the civil service, if you haven't done it to the letter, then you cannot uphold the appeal if it goes to appeal. Or, potentially, if it does go through appeal, you end up in the employment tribunal, not a position I'm sure the council wants to be in. So that is an area for improvement that this council desperately needs to look at, because it could end up costing us in the future if we don't look at that properly. And then skipping forward to page 39, where's the commentary? It's a bad report. There's nothing in there whatsoever. It just tells us which ones are in amber, doesn't say what the current performance is, what we're doing, how we're measuring it, and particularly over data protection.
I'm ever so sorry, but I've been
Yeah,
quite
I get
strict
that.
all evening, or endeavoured today. The 3 minutes are up. I'm not wishing to be rude to you in any way. Are there any points of clarification? Can I thank you for the comments, Councillor Wilson? I'm sure that officers have heard the comments made about clarifying sentences so that they are more explicit. We always want to write in plain English, and I'm sure you take that on board. I know all Cabinet members will be looking in detail at comments in regard to this, and where there are areas for potential improvement, we will endeavour to look at those very, very seriously. I know that several of these issues have already been discussed with officers, but can I thank you for your comments? Are there any further comments or points people wish to make? Okay, and I thank you very much for that then. Cabinet will continue to review these, etc. The next item then is, we'll get there shortly, the General Fund and Housing and Revenue Account. Quarterly Budget Monitoring Report, quarter 1. This report presents Cabinet with a forecast outturn for 2018-19 for the General Fund and Housing Revenue Account budgets, based on performance at the end of June 2018. Section 4 gives an overview of the current position, which for the General Fund is a small adverse variance of 2,000 overall, and for the HRA an increased surplus of 22,000. Appendices A and B give further details of the key variances for both funds. There are a number of HRA environments that require Cabinet approval, and these are shown at Appendix C. Section 5 outlines the main spend pressures that the Council is facing for the year, the most significant of which is the estimated increase in cost of the new recycling contract. Sections 6 and 7 then set out how the main income streams are performing and the saving targets that are being achieved. A capital programme update is shown at Section 8, and Cabinet are asked to approve updated programmes for both the General Fund and the Housing Revenue Account prior to submission to Council. The revised programme for the General Fund includes a further £924,000 for further purchases of investment properties. The recommendations are set out at Section 2 of the report. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move straight in at section 6.1 on page 45. We mentioned a moment ago about plain English. Usually when we have reports, if it's a good figure, it's in brackets. If it isn't, it's not. To the average person reading this, they might not understand what the minus figures are compared to everything else. I think we should standardise the approach to reporting finances across the council so it is easier to interpret. But if I'm reading this report right, then our income is slightly up by £29,000, well £29,500, but it looks as if, again if I'm reading this right, it is the planning fee income which effectively has saved us yet again on that front from not being anywhere near our budget. 7.2, I have some concerns about that because it mentions about exceptions to the Civic Hall Bistro Cafe, and that we are delivering an enhanced service compared to what was originally permitted in the budget. Now, if I remember budget night correctly, and I remember it being a long night, if I remember the budget right, there were some savings which were identified by changes to the bistro. Those were approved by full council. If we're not doing that, then I believe we should have more of a description as to how we're offering an enhanced service. I'm not saying it's wrong or it's right, but councillors should have the opportunity to see that and what that involves compared to what was approved. Going on to Appendix A, where it shows the main variances, I'm concerned about not only the £22,000 additional bistro cost, but the reduced bar income. And I know you're saying this is negated by other issues, but we warned at the Budget Council that by increasing all the charges across the bar by 5p would have an income. I used to work in the bar industry, and I know that you get some price resistance when you increase the cost of someone's pint. And it seems that we are suffering from that. So I would ask Cabinet to perhaps do some benchmarking or perhaps re-look at that decision, because quite often, especially with shows like Chubby Brown, that is where we get a heck of a lot of income from, because people like a pint when they go and see Chubby Brown. They're being put off by drinking one or two more, if that's what they want to do, because we put up our prices and we could be cutting off our nose despite our faces. And then, I suppose you would expect me to raise this about the depot closure under the Finance and Civic Affairs. We have asked for this information time and time again. By having the delays on the depot, by still having to maintain St Mary's in its reduced form, admittedly, there would be a cost to this council going beyond what was anticipated. We were told we'd be out of there by last September, then it turned into June, we're now into September. I accept things are winding down. That's almost 12 months since we originally promised everything would be online. And there have been additional costs, and the council, when I've asked questions, have denied that. I think we should have had that earlier.
To a conclusion? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any points of clarification? Thank you very much for your comments. Any notes? No questions to do? I think we'd always like to write reports in a standardised format, and I'll ask our officers if they can do that. I think often financial figures, it does take a lot of reading into for a lot of people, but the point's been made, and we will look at whether that is possible to do anything other than that. I do note actually that in regard to the Civic Hall, although there has been a bit of a downward trend in some parts of it, there's a bit of an upward trend in others, so I think they sort of balance each other out. We've heard the comments made. The recommendations are printed 2.1 to 2.4 on page 43. I'd like to move that they are agreed. Second that. Is that approved?
Yes.
Is that unanimous?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. We're then moving on to recommendations from overview and scrutiny panels, and they are printed over the page to page 4. Councillor Glass, you are the chair of the relevant overview and scrutiny committee. Would you like to present your recommendations, or your committee's recommendations?
I knew there was a reason I stood behind. Yeah, thanks, Chair. There's a special meeting of my internal panel on the 26th of July regarding the maintenance of the monitoring of the ground maintenance contract. Although we thought that this meeting would last a bit longer than what it actually did with Glengyle, and there was a lot of positives that come out of it rather than just negatives, as we sometimes hear in the so-called social world that's out there now. And the recommendations of front you 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 believe that they're positive recommendations from that, and hopefully that the Cabinet will take some of them into consideration and carry them forward for another time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Glass. Any thoughts of clarification? Councillor?
No, sorry.
No. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Glass. Councillor Lloyd, this does fall under your Cabinet responsibility. Do you want to...
Yeah, if I just take you through the recommendations.
Sorry, Councillor Lloyd, I failed to bring in Councillor Wilson again. You're wishing to speak on this, Councillor Wilson?
I'll happily move forward if John wants to stay.
No, I moved.
John's moved. Sorry, Councillor Wilson. I was not looking at my sheet in front of me when I was prepared.
I promise I'm not trying to emulate Councillor Condaclaw. I do actually take an interest in these issues. I would actually emulate some of what Councillor Glass said. I felt that meeting was a really valuable and worthwhile exercise in undertaking, actually. It was one which wasn't on the cards to begin with in as much depth, but the portfolio holder was there, and I hope he would agree that we did some very positive work as much as we could that night. I think I would really encourage Cabinet to take these recommendations forward, because one of the things that we identified, and I'm sure councillors across the spectrum will sympathise, is that there is a mismatch between public expectation and the reality of what the grounds maintenance contracts provide. One of the key things is about trying to give a website or a page on the website to identify what the specification is moving forward, so residents can see what they should be expecting. And also, there are some particular sensitivities around cemeteries. I think we've all had that, and having a dedicated section about cemeteries, because that is, when you're dealing with loved ones, that's one of the most emotive issues that you'll come across, and I hope that the Cabinet will take those recommendations forward. It was also interesting to hear as well about the meetings which the portfolio holder and yourself had with Glendale, and some of the suggestions which I think you both threw into the pot about how you could make the contract work better, or make savings, or make it easier. We didn't go into as much detail on that as we could have done because of time constraints, but I would hope the portfolio holder would perhaps be willing to give an update to members either by email or whatever on how those recommendations or suggestions are progressing, because some of them we may disagree with, but some of them on the whole look quite good, perhaps replacing shrubbery here and there, odd flowers here and there, and they can actually look rather effective and save us money and effort at the same time. So I would hope, in addition to these, the portfolio holder will perhaps look at giving an update to members by email or whatever about how that's working, because until the new contract's in place, however that goes, we're with the contract we've got unless we modify it. And I think it would also help members to explain to our residents as well if things are changing, what is changing, why they're changing, how they're changing. Because for whatever reasons, and I know we discussed a lot of them, grounds maintenance has been the bugbear for many new councillors and existing councillors since the election. It's been one of the top radar issues, and the more information we can arm councillors with, the less we can push officers away and say, actually, this is happening for whatever reason. So, some good recommendations there. I hope you'll take them forward.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any points of clarification? No. Thank you very much. Councillor Lord.
Yeah, it was an interesting meeting. I would be fair to the overview and scrutiny. Excuse me. It was very informative for both, I think, not just for them but for myself as well. The recommendations that are on item 4, I'm hoping I've got this right. I'm looking at John. Most of these are about the future contract that we're going in, because part 1, item 1, the review on the land ownership, etc. I totally agree with that. The encouragement to be given to organisations to set up friends of different areas. You've got Friends of the Nook, Slough, etc. I totally agree with that. I think we should be moving in that direction. On the item 3, that the public be given access to the current grounds maintenance contract specification deals. The current details is very difficult at the moment because we're going into a round of looking at a new contractor, and so it's very difficult to do that at the moment without giving somebody out there of a better opportunity of applying. So I think that can be done under the new contract. So I'm pretty certain we can do that. And so everybody out there understands what the specification is. That the monthly grounds maintenance contract performance report provided the portfolio holder be distributed to all members. Well, I've got no problem with that. As the reports come in, I will send them out. I don't get one every month. I get a verbal one sometimes. But I will make sure that every councillor, at least scrutiny, gets copies of those reports. And the final one, once the new tender's in place, dedicated page on, I totally agree with that. I think that's the way forward. As scrutiny have said, we've said, the more information we can give to public on grounds maintenance, the better. The more informed they are, the better. So I'm quite happy with all those except for 3 where we're talking about current grounds maintenance specifications. On the future one, hopefully we build that in so people can see. On the current one, it's a little difficult at the moment. So I'm happy with those recommendations.
Okay, any comments?
I agree.
Can we thank
I agree.
the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny, Internal Overview and Scrutiny for this committee's time and for coming forward with the recommendations tonight. Overview and Scrutiny can add real value to the work of this council, and we do value what you've done. There is, though, recommendation 9B in regard, and I think Councillor Glass, that involves your Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Did you want to say anything? The recommendation is there regarding a briefing you scheduled, but did you wish to add anything?
There's nothing more, Chair, although I did have to ask a question that why a special meeting was actually being called. That the Cabinet had already agreed, basically what we've finally agreed at the panel, and the panel note the content of the call and the recommendations made by the panel to the Cabinet that all members' briefing be scheduled regarding the new proposed contract specifications. Obviously, some of this, or the majority, had to be in private session because there was some sensitivity on the number of on figures and various other things. And there was a vote, and the vote went to a casting vote, which is my casting vote, and I shall look forward to the special meeting called by the Cabinet member for all members, so they know exactly what's happening with the new contract that's been drawn up, and by that time go through the process and then come back to the council. So it should be an interesting meeting, to say the least. But I felt that this was, the meeting called that night was a pure substitute for the meeting that there will be whenever the portfolio holders got the contract in position.
Thank you. Councillor Glass, any points of clarification?
Just on that final point, no matter what reason, I think that the scrutiny meeting was called for. What came out of it, at the end of the day was good, so for whatever reason it was called for. I'd already made the decision and said previously, and I'll reiterate that today, there will be a all members meeting, and I say all members because I think all members should hear about the specification, etc., that's going out to tender. And that will be called. Unfortunately, it will have to be in private session, obviously, because the sensitivity to the bits that are in the contract. We don't want to give one contractor opportunities over another, so it will have to be in private session, hopefully.
Councillor Lloyd, I'm going to bring you to a conclusion now because you're drifting into making a statement as opposed to a point of clarification.
All right, I wasn't doing clarification, I do apologise.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Again, the call-in was a very constructive and informative meeting. Despite some members who were present saying it was a waste of time, I felt otherwise. There were some issues which we felt on the opposition side hadn't been fully explained or addressed at the Cabinet meeting, and it is the legal and democratic right of the opposition to call in a decision where appropriate, and it was deemed by the head of paid service to be a valid and legitimate call-in. And we got a lot of answers to some of the questions which were outstanding about the tender and moving forward. My concern, and Councillor Lloyd will remember I raised these concerns, is about the process and how we actually deal with this meeting, which Councillor Lloyd, and I think it's the right decision to have a meeting. It was about what sort of meeting we have, and I hope perhaps Councillor Lloyd might be able to expand on what he envisages and how this meeting will work, because a briefing is not a fully fledged legal meeting of this council. It has no powers, no right to make recommendations or do anything except basically sit there and have a briefing from the officers. I fully take on board that Councillor Lloyd said that he would endeavour to take on board comments by members, but we have no way of knowing how those recommendations or those ideas will be taken forward. That's why the counter proposal was a full council, because we don't have OJSC anymore to get everyone together. Cabinet can't, well, they can attend scrutiny, but they can't be part of scrutiny. So the only way that we felt on the opposition bench is to get everyone together with an equal vote and an equal say. Was a full council, that didn't go through. So we have to move forward with what we've got. But I'd be interested to hear precisely how Councillor Lloyd will make this work and how he will deal with any potential recommendations or suggestions from those members, because we're talking about a 8 million pound contract. I'm sure Simone would love to have 1.8 billion. But a 1.8 million pound project, potentially, that's what the value is now, we don't know what it will be, but members will be fielding the questions as to what happens under the new process. It's only right that members have a say and an input into what emerges from that. And it's how Councillor Lloyd envisages dealing with that I'm mainly concerned about. So I'm hoping tonight you'll outline some of those concerns and perhaps circulate to members nearer to the time, the ground rules, the agenda, how you intend to deal with things, etc.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any points of clarification? Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. Right, back to you, Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, I will. Okay, firstly, the process, council process is quite simple. Well, maybe not, but to councillors it should be quite simple. I accept there's a lot of new councillors, and I said that at the scrutiny meeting. An officer's report is done. It then goes to scrutiny, which this did. It was a long time ago, it was only 2 years ago, but it went to scrutiny. At the scrutiny process, they had a working party, an all-member working party. This is what I said about new members may not have took part in it. It went to that, and they had a working party that looked into it. I'm pretty certain it was chaired by Councillor Shepherd at the time, I'm not sure, but because I say it was a while ago. So it went through the process there. It then went to full council to go out there to move it on. It was agreed by full council, and then the officers started working on the tendering process. I will apologise, and the only thing I'll apologise is for that I've operated totally out of procedure, because the next part of the procedure would have been going to full council. What I did probably confused it a little bit more by saying I wanted to inform members, so I wanted a special meeting, a briefing before it went to tender, so people could have an input at that meeting and add anything else in, because there was new members within the council group. So it had followed the process. It had gone through the official process from start to finish. It was coming to the end of that process where there was an election and a lot of new councillors. That's why I slotted the extra meeting. In theory, I shouldn't have done that. It should have gone out to tender and gone straight to full council. So yes, Councillor Wilson, it will go to full council in due course when the tenders are received. When we've received the tenders and we've got the winning tender, then that goes to full council. But what I want to do, as I said, is have that meeting in between, so people that are new at least can get things explained to them and have the opportunity to put some ideas forward. We may be able to include them at that late stage, we may not. That's the way the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. So I had followed the process until I slotted that extra meeting in. I think the meeting, as Councillor Wilson said, it's welcomed. It is welcomed. It is an extra meeting, and I'll leave it at that. I will endeavour to make sure that you get all the relevant information at that meeting.
Okay, Councillor Lord.
Once the tenders are in and one has been accepted, surely there will not be the opportunity to change that contract.
No, but it will be ratified like everything else before council.
Okay. I think we're all happy to accept that there's going to be an all-member briefing and encourage everybody to attend to take part in that particular all-member briefing. Everybody happy with that? Yeah. Before moving to item 10, I do want to say, and I think it would be remiss of me at this juncture not to, this council, Nuneaton and Bedworth, in Nuneaton Town Centre today, experienced one of the biggest international events I think we have had the pleasure of having in our borough with the OGO, obviously working in partnership with Warwickshire County Council, very successful event. I want to take this opportunity to ask our two executive directors to thank all of our staff who were involved in that magnificent event. I think it was fabulous to actually see the streets of Nuneaton buzzing with excitement and to welcome some really exciting sportsmen. It was men on this occasion, and to have the winner of the Tour de France here, etc., etc. Absolutely amazing, and I'm sure we would all celebrate right across the council, whatever our political persuasions. What was an excellent event, and thank our staff, many who started very, very early this morning, to make sure that that event was conducted as well as it possibly could be. So I'm sure that was be a message from all councillors, I trust, across the council to say a big thank you to our staff, and I'm sure Brent and Simone will pass that on our behalf. Item 10, there is no any other business, so I do conclude the meeting, and thank you very much for your attendance.